this.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please read the statement?
This is a meeting of the Township Council for Monday, July 10th, 2017. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public and the press on January 5th, 2017, and was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-7.
Roll call.
Councilmember Kadish.
Here.
Councilmember Holmes.
Here.
Councilmember Rizzuto.
Here.
Councilmember Wetzel.
Here.
Council President Murphy.
Here. Please rise to salute the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, our municipal attorney is not present. However, Vernon Townships is here to step in his place. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
I'd like to open the meeting to public comment. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there anyone that would like to address the public or the council? Please step up.
Good evening. My name's Arthur Alvini. I live in Vernon. I hear we're going to float a bond to fix this pump station. Now, does that mean everybody in town pays for this, or is there going to be the people that just use the sewer? I mean, we do it in the ground by my house, and cows will probably fly before I get the sewers out by me. And also, I'd like to know if I could buy one of the fire hydrants that we don't use. My dog would love to have it. Now, what's the deal on this bond?
Well, Art, it's not a comment section. It's just a comment section. It's not really a question and answer, but there's been no decision made, to my knowledge, that we're floating any bond.
Okay.
So, and just so you know, as far as the plastic on the fire hydrants, we would have to float a bond for that, to take them off. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council?
Good evening, Council. Greg Kurtzel, Sussex side of Vernon. I come before you tonight to see if we can get an ordinance set up. Right now, I'm the Vice President of Vernon Youth Football. We have a great field, great complex. We have a snack bar that's not used. It's too far from the field. Nobody will ever use it. They've tried to use it. It's pretty useless. Plus, it doesn't have even if we were to use it, doesn't have the facilities inside. All it is a freezer and a refrigerator. There's no stove, there's no hood system, there's no fire suppression system. So what we do is every game, we bring everything down to the field, we set up a tent, and we work from under a tent. Last year was my first year doing it when I first got involved in the league. And the people before were, I guess, comfortable doing that. And it's ridiculous. It takes me an hour and a half just to set it up before the game, because obviously we know how people, they have to volunteer, but if it starts at 6 o'clock, they're there at 6 o'clock, and as soon as their time is done, they want to leave, which then falls on me to put everything back away when everything is done. I went to talk to Michelle from Recreation and asked her, is there anything we could do? Maybe put a satellite snack bar down there. The issue with that is with the state, you need a full-blown septic system, which obviously is not going to work. So then I was talking to her about, what about a truck? And she said that I'd have to talk to Allison in zoning. Well, once I talked to her, she called me back and said that there's an ordinance that doesn't allow you to have a truck down there. So I saw Michelle on Friday, and I wanted to see this ordinance. And there was only something about solicitation on township property where you couldn't do it. But it wasn't that you couldn't have a truck, it just said strictly solicitation. So I talked to Michelle today, and obviously there needs to be an ordinance introduced to have a truck, not a truck. What we want to do is maybe get a trailer that's all set up, leave it there for the game. Game is over, we put it away, and it's strictly only there on game time, which is Saturday nights and Sunday mornings. Apparently, the same problem is lacrosse. They have the same issue because they practice all the way up on top and they have their games, the 2 fields all the way to the left. And again, they don't have a snack bar. They can't bring anything down there. So it's not only me, it's the other sports that are in town that utilize that field. So I'm here today to see if we can maybe get an ordinance, and actually the ordinance that would be granting permission for a nonprofit in-town youth sports organization to have a mobile concession stand on township property during their season. I mean, it's just a lot of work, and actually that's one of our biggest fundraisers. And it's horrible. It's a horrible setup.
And the trailer, I mean, what kind of a trailer are you?
Like, when you go to a carnival and there's the food trailers, they'll have a grill, a deep fryer,
I haven't been to a carnival in a long time, so that's
refrigerator,
but-
freezers. Just so, everything that we sell, but then at least we can go a little bit further, and there's other things
So it's
that
like a
we can
portable-
do. Yeah, it's portable. You know what?
It's a
It
food-
goes down there for the games, and it's out for during the week. It only comes down there for the games.
And you're thinking of purchasing this truck?
Correct.
It would be yours?
Yes.
And then,
Truck or trailer?
Trailer. We looked at the truck issue, but then trying to find a truck, and I looked into that, and they all have 200,000-300,000 miles on it, and they're coming from either a FedEx or a bakery, something like that. And then you're talking about having things broken down. So it's just easier when I talk to people that are in the business. They said just use a trailer. Inside the trailer, it has a full fire suppression system in it. It has the hood. It has ventilation. It has everything that a permanent stand would have, except that you don't have to worry about a septic system, and you can move it when you're done.
I guess, so is this something the council is interested in pursuing or discussing
There's a stand
further?
there. I know it's way out of the way, but there is a concession stand there, and there's a concession stand on the flats that's not being used.
Right, and actually, that's the other issue, because friends of mine had their All-Star game. And I was joking around with them, because we were at the field closest to the tracks, and they say it's all the way over there. And again, from a coaching standpoint and even a parent, if I'm going there to watch my son or daughter play, for me to go all the way to the top from the field to there and to come all the way back, I lost a quarter of the game.
Yeah.
And it's Sunday mornings. You know how many people come up, oh, do you have coffee? We can't even sell coffee because we just don't have the facilities down at the field to do it. So again, and this is one of our biggest fundraisers that we have.
So is this something that the council
I don't
is?
know, I would suggest that you talk to the business administrator from the mayor. That would,
Now, you have,
it's under the aegis of the Department of Recreation.
Yeah, well, I was with Michelle. And she was okay with it. She didn't have a problem, but she said I have to come here and because apparently in the ordinance, if it doesn't specifically say a food truck or anything, then it's prohibited. So if it's a vague ordinance and it doesn't specifically say that you can have one there, if it's not, then you can't have it. So that's why I'm here today.
yeah, Skylands is having a food market with all these trucks coming in. Is there any way you can work out a deal with one of those vendors?
Problem is, they give us a small percentage and
Yeah.
keep everything, and if that's the case, then I'd have to do the tent. Because again, that's our biggest fundraiser. That's what we use to buy the equipment. That's when we have to have our helmets redone every year, certified.
I understand.
So again, this money helps us keep registration costs down. So, to have it outside, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, that was the case, that somebody came down, and I guess it wasn't even worthwhile for them, because that was the last time I ever saw that.
That was the PAL.
Yeah.
There was a
And
very
they
poor
couldn't- they-
participation on the
Yeah,
part
they
of the
couldn't
public.
get people to work it.
Well, see, we have volunteers. They give us a check, a deposit, that they have to work 2 snack bars. And once they fulfill their obligation, they get their check back. So we have the volunteers to do it. It's just a matter of the way it's just the way it's set up. You get a rainy day, we have a tent. It's a 10 by 10 tent, pop-up tent. And we've looked into other options, and actually we really don't have any.
I have no problem with it. But I think, sitting up here, listening to you, I hear one side. I haven't heard anything from the administration, but if you want to pursue it, at this point, I would have no problem.
Okay.
And then
So-
we'd have to make it for every sport, not
sorry,
just
excuse
the
me?
football. It has to be for every sport there. Would have to have the
Well,
opportunity to do the
every
same
sport
thing.
would have the opportunity to
Right,
do that,
right,
correct?
Right,
But their vehicle would be theirs.
Yeah, that's correct.
right. So anybody else that wanted to do it
Yeah,
as
so I mean,
well
if
could
lacrosse
do it.
wants to do it, if girls softball wants to do it,
Yep. Well, maybe that's something we should explore with the lawyer and zoning and whomever.
The only thing I would ask is that whether or not you would be in line, there'd be any problem in terms of food handling licenses.
yeah, which we already have, because we have the food down at the field.
Now, which fire department are you with?
What do you mean, fire
He's
department?
not. It's football.
Oh, I thought you said the Sussex Fire
I was
Department.
going to say, I said, where do you go to work?
Okay. all right. I was gonna say-
Yeah, no, this is Vernon Youth Football.
All right.
Okay, let's explore it then. Yeah.
So what would be my next step?
Speak to the business administrator and the mayor.
Okay,
I'll give you a card.
sure. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the council?
Quicker, so, thank you.
It's up there, time-wise.
Hi, my name is Krista Gary. I live in Vernon. I don't know if what I have to say is going to do any good or not, but I hope it will. This pertains to everyone, not just the town council. I've recently heard comments from some people about the lack of civility at our town council meetings. This is nothing new, as this has been going on for many years. Wouldn't it be wonderful if this could be improved upon? We have a number of challenges in this town. Let's deal with them and stop the pettiness and backstabbing. We need to realize that everyone has worth. We should be able to agree to disagree, and we all need to be listened to respectfully. To believe that our way is the only way and to be intolerant of another's opinion is wrong. If we could discuss our differences in an amicable manner and offer some constructive criticism, we could all benefit. We should be able to forget the past and not continually bring it up over and over again. Name-calling and bullying should never be tolerated, and we should all speak out strongly against it. In life, we can't always get our way, and life's not always fair. That's life. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but the majority rules. That's the democratic way. We have so much to be thankful for in this country. We have more freedoms than in any other part of the world. Let's not let our personal differences continue to divide us. Let's get on with life and realize we are all equal in the eyes of God. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the council?
Sally Rinker, Vernon. First, I'd like to talk about the topic of the town council as a policy-making body. This book, which many of us have utilized over the years, looks familiar, right? It's titled The Powers and Duties of the Municipal Governing Body, and it's put out by Rutgers University Center for Government Services. It addresses this issue of the governing body as a policy-making body. I would like to read one short paragraph. The governing body is a policy-making group. The fundamental point to be emphasized is that the governing body in any municipality is a policy-making body. With the possible exception of extremely small communities, elected officials should be able to devote their time to policy decisions, not only regarding the budget, but also for all activities of concern to the community. And if one looks up the definition of policy, which I won't bore you with reading that, we all pretty much are aware of what policy really means. So again, this book is describing the duties of the council. Now, we're all aware that forms of government are guided by statutes. Nowhere in the optional municipal charter law does it say the council cannot or does not set policy. We know that the council acts as a body and actions are accomplished by majority vote. So it is clear that through majority votes, the council directs the mayor through policy, by setting policy. And policy can be any activities of concern for the community, those goals and procedures. The second thing I'd like to discuss in brief tonight is to segue off of a concern of Councilman Rizzuto at the last meeting. The last town council meeting, you voiced concern that a significant point was left out of the May 22nd, 2017 executive session minutes. What was left out seemed to be somewhat beneficial to the mayor's efforts regarding the DPW MUA shared services contract. I've noticed that other significant points of information have been left out of other meeting minutes, and I'm hoping that there is not a purposeful effort or pattern here. For instance, the potential sale of the Faline building and the tug-of-war that has evolved between 3 council members who voted for an appraisal to be done, because Mayor Shortway and Councilwoman Murphy tried to market it for only $90,000 without an appraisal, is another example of significant missing information. Everyone agreed to market the property, but the bone of contention was the price. I and others were very critical of the $90,000 low price, and yet each and every meeting as discussion ensued, and there were 8 separate council meetings with 8 minutes relating to those meetings, 8 sets of minutes, that the clerk failed to include the $90,000 price. And I sat here through those meetings. I thought that was one of the main points of interest and the source of the appraisal debate. That still continues, I believe. Furthermore, I stated that Murphy was in conflict by her admission on the record that she made calls to see if there was interest, circumventing and compromising the required fair and open bid process. At 2 separate meetings, no appearance of that significant point either. I've come to the conclusion that after 8 meetings of discussions for an appraisal, and the mayor's pushback and refusal to do one, and even stating he's putting the sale off, we have Murphy claiming we're in dire straits and should sell it. That has gone completely mum after the other council members wanted an appraisal. Why? Why is it just fading away? Something that was so urgent. I believe she knows if an appraisal is done, it will most definitely show that she and the mayor were grossly underselling that property, cheating taxpayers of many tens of thousands of dollars. Very bad for a bid for re-election. So they dropped it like a hot potato. No dire straits, no effort for revenue, or the return of a property to the tax rolls. Getting back to the minutes, on Miss Murphy's command telling me, and I quote, "Mind your business, Sally Rinker," at the May 8th meeting, and not a word of it appeared in the minutes. So when I responded to her comment on May 22nd, stating the reasons Vernon business is my business, the clerk again left out the significant aspects, including Murphy's rude comment, thus making my statements appear that I came just to speak about myself rather than a response to Murphy's arrogant statement. So I am suggesting that the council members who are concerned that the minutes reflect the true gist of business discussed. And yes, we all know minutes are not required to be verbatim. Please review them carefully before your vote. When the omissions are significant points, and those omissions rescue and/or support certain persons' agendas, in my opinion, there most certainly seems to be a pattern. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council?
Good evening. My name's Tom McClackery. And I noticed on the agenda tonight you got two ordinances that you're introducing. One is for the assessment company that you're going to take out $1 million bond for, and the other is the pay raises for non-union employees. And my comment on that is, if the assessment company is the same one that did the assessment in 2008, I would say that, you know, those folks not only cost us the $1 million for the assessment, but probably a couple $100,000, no offense, in legal fees. Because we had the highest in the entire county of tax appeals, property tax appeals, because of those knuckleheads. Those knuckleheads in 2008 jacked up everybody's assessment by 150, 200%. And there was this little thing going on in 2008 called the real estate collapse. And nobody in this township could even come close to selling their property for the assessed valuation. What that led to was a bunch of people going to tax court in the county, appealing their tax assessments. And the majority of them, over 99% of them, probably won because they were overassessed to begin with. As all of that's going on, that's 10 years. The tax assessor, who is a non-union employee who's getting a raise or something's going on there, the tax assessor has at least 3 ways of adjusting the tax rate. And you all knew it. And you could have adjusted that rate. And you could either do it by sections, which is what Wantage is doing now, or you could do it town-wide, and you could just reduce everybody's assessment by a ratio. That wasn't done. And when we just sat here for 10 years, we paid for the lawyers to go down to the county. We paid for the tax assessor to go down to the county and appeal all these tax assessments, and they lost. You know, they just flat out lost. So that cost the taxpayers a couple $100,000. You know, basically this assessment company are criminal imbeciles because you cannot raise a tax assessment when the entire country real estate prices fell, except in Vernon. And actually that's it. The other thing I wanted to bring up is I'm a dog owner, and you have something on the agenda for tonight. I'm going to get up and talk about that, but, you know, I used to think I was the biggest pansy in my neighborhood until I got my dog. And my dog got beat up by a Boston Terrier. So you may want to think about adding Boston Terriers to vicious and wild dogs. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council? Seeing no one else, may I have a motion to close to public?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have the mayor's report. Is there a report at all?
No, there isn't.
I'd like, since there's no mayor report, I have some questions that I'd like to ask Mr. Faulkner. Whatever did happen to the appraisal? Did it get done? I sent the last conversation we had for Faline, the appraisal for Faline. I sent Mayor Shortway a proposal, or a gentleman who gave me a verbal proposal on the phone that was considerably less than the proposal he sent us. And I've never heard anything since. So I'm assuming it got done because we asked the mayor to do it.
I don't know about that. I didn't see the correspondence that you had with him.
So no appraisal's been done. Is that true, or?
No, we did the one that.
Well, it was a proposal. It wasn't an appraisal.
No. I know. We looked into having an appraisal done based upon not utilizing the current use, and that was something that I believe that you and the majority of the council was against. and you wanted it to go forward, that we just market it as is.
And the appraisal as is.
Right.
But,
I did not see any of your correspondence with the mayor.
okay, and it was not done. I'm guessing because we
Not to
would
my
have gotten
knowledge.
it.
Not
right?
to my knowledge.
Okay, okay. So that's the one thing. The second is, I think we should, since the minutes for the committees are not recorded or posted online, I think we should start getting reports from the committees, from the Rec Committee, from the GAC Committee, from Beautification, Environmental, because, no, I don't think anybody here on the council knows what's going on in any of these committees.
The beautification only keeps notes. They don't do
Well, they can
full-blown.
do,
Yeah,
well,
but
they
don't
can come and give us a report, and then also the money spent for each committee. I mean, since I've been on the council, I think I can only remember one committee giving a report. So I'd like to see that done, if that could happen.
If they aren't supplying us with a report, you would want us to do that.
Well, either maybe the chairperson of the committee could take minutes and then get posted, or they could come to the council and give us a report, maybe quarterly, of what's going on in their committee and what money is being spent. So those are the two things. And then my third item is, there was a gentleman here last week talking about the speed limit on Canistere,
2 weeks ago.
or 2 weeks ago, excuse me. Do you recall?
Oh, you're asking me? Yes, I do recall that. Yes, ma'am.
Did he ever come back in? Did anybody reach out to him?
I know that the mayor reached out to the chief of police and asked him about trying to do a little more enforcement up in that area where, it was pointed out that there was a problem.
Okay, great, thank you. I didn't see if it was followed up. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up a comment on, I think some of the confusion in terms of minutes is that these two committees were set up as ad hoc committees. Ad hoc committees don't have to keep minutes. However, the problem is that I think one or both of these committees have budgets. And if a committee has a budget, they should be providing us with minutes. And those minutes should be approved during a meeting. I defer to the attorney or to the clerk on that.
I agree.
Is your question? Well,
No, it's a statement.
is that it?
Whatever we could do to get the information would be great.
Is that it?
What?
Is that it?
Yeah.
Next, we have minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of June 12th, 2017, and the executive session minutes of June 12th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
A motion?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to pass unanimously.
Wait, I take that all back. I wasn't at that meeting. I have to
Would you
abstain.
like to abstain?
Yes,
Motion carries to pass minutes with abstention noted.
thank you.
Next, items for discussion, the ambulance squad, with Administrator Volker and Fire Marshal Lou Tosto. Please step up and speak on this matter, or?
Is it all right if I sit?
You could sit.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but
I'll lead off, and if I need Lou, which I do, then I'll ask him to chime in. I think with some background had been given on this. I know that when I was first hired last year, I was told by the mayor that this was a very important concern for the community, that there was difficulty in getting volunteers to continue to be the only source of medical assistance to the residents. And that's not unique. I think everybody may be aware that And I believe that Vernon's exemplary in the fact that they made it to 2016 before running into this issue. I came from an Essex County community, which it's prevalent down there that daytime coverage is really very, very difficult and not able to serve their communities and haven't been for probably, 15 or more years. I subsequently met with both the Vernon Ambulance Squad and the Glenwood Pochuck Ambulance Squad, meeting with the officers in those groups, and they did admit that that was a big concern of theirs, that they had problem covering the shifts, and as dedicated as they are, they just didn't have enough people to do daytimes on a regular basis. When we met in June, they said, you better start putting a plan together, and I had told them that we were planning to go forward with a paid ambulance service, but it may take a while. I subsequently heard back from both groups in the fall stating that you better move up your timetable because the coverage for the shifts was getting more and more desperate. So I subsequently met with them and conducted interviews with the two primary health groups that serve this area. That was Atlantic Healthcare and Prime Healthcare. Atlantic being out of Newton and Prime being out of St. Clair's in Denville. They participated, both ambulance squads participated in the interviews with both of the two health groups, and it was unanimously decided by everyone, myself included, that the best proposal was coming from Prime Healthcare from St. Clair's. We subsequently went forward in trying to put together a contract, which we did in January of this year, and since that time that we finalized the contract, we've been served to cover shifts by St. Clair's. Initially, it was 3 days a week. A fourth day was added, and a night shift was added since then. So it only goes to indicate that the difficulty that the volunteers are having trying to cover the shifts. And like I said, I think it's a tribute to all that they've done for a lot of years in serving this community, as large as it is, and as large, as large in population, as large in square miles that it is, to be able to serve it as effectively as they have. When we did first sit down with Prime Healthcare and decided that, let them know we were going forward with them, I did tell them that we were looking to do a paid service through the township sometime in the near future, and their exact quote was, "You'd be crazy if you didn't." So that being said, I know that Lou Tosto had already gotten a head start on some of this. Lou has previously organized 2 paid ambulance services in Lodi and Garfield, so he has experience with this process. In addition, he and I both met with Sparta's Ambulance Squad, who has been running, if you will call it a hybrid, for probably close to 2 years now, in which they do paid during the day and volunteers at night. And they gave us some valuable information and input as to what we would likely want to do going forward. We have at this time a draft of an ordinance that's with the township attorney that he's reviewing. And in it, we incorporate the volunteers into this new format, and which they will be involved in still serving the town, and also with serving on an executive board. A required part of the ordinance is that, and for all first aid squads, is that you must have a medical director who is certified in emergency medicine. And we've already started to search for such a person. I have someone who is interested in it. They are a resident of Lafayette, and they currently work through St. Clair's Hospital. and we've spoken with them about it. But I think this is something that we want to try to do, get going before the end of the year. And I know that St. Clair's, in their capacity that they've been doing it now, would continue up to the point where we would be ready to hire part-time personnel to run it through the township. At this point, I'll let you ask questions that you may have as part of the discussion, and either Lou or I will try to answer them. And if we don't have answers for you at this point in time, we will certainly try to find answers for you as quickly as possible.
I have, can a volunteer also work, be paid?
No.
So you're looking for daytime paid and evening would be fall on the volunteers? Is that?
Would not be all on the volunteers. It would be whatever they are able to do. Currently, there is at least one night shift that they're not able to fill. I think it's Wednesday, yeah. Wednesday night.
Would the volunteers be able to join St. Clair's or the paid?
No,
aspect?
you can't do both. There has to be a separation in time. I think, what did we find out? It's all.
They call that the Garcia law.
Lou, maybe you need to speak into the mic. Pull the chair,
Yeah,
pull the
if you
chair
could
up.
step up.
All right, so there has to be like a year separation period. It's called the Garcia law. It's based on case law where a volunteer was a volunteer for 5 years, got hired by the municipality to be a paid EMT. It didn't work out. He sued for 6 years and won. So that drove the Garcia law. Says that if you have both a paid and a volunteer service, somebody on the volunteer side wants to go to the pay side, there has to be a separation.
No, that wasn't my question. My question was, could a volunteer join a shift in which the paid people are working
As a volunteer?
as a volunteer?
Okay, as a volunteer.
They can have a crew ready if they want, sure.
To answer your question, likelihood is.
Call, probably.
Yeah, to answer your question, likelihood is that whatever the paids aren't doing, let's say hypothetically, we do this strictly Monday through Friday daytime, and whatever nights the volunteers are unable to handle. That would not preclude the volunteers from supplementing either day or nights when they're not scheduled to work. So if they could put together enough individuals to have a second crew, as Lou was saying, to respond for another call that might come in while the paid crew was tied up, then that would be certainly the best case scenario. The primary objective here is patient care. We want the best possible patient care that can be provided. Right now, we know that the way things were going, the time in between when the call came in for the request and when the response got there was starting to get too large, which was similar to what happened, down in some of the communities in Essex, Bergen, Morris, et cetera, where they had to go to paids.
What about,
Sorry, go ahead.
what about the rigs? I mean, would we have to purchase more?
No, we choose the same ones we have.
So,
They just have to be registered with the State Department of Health.
but then what would happen is are you taking them away from the ambulance squads?
Absolutely not.
The township owns the ambulances,
Right.
so we could use them as we see fit, but we would have to separate out what's being used by the volunteers and what's being used
Well,
by
that's
the
what I'm saying,
paids.
because then if you took them from the volunteers, they wouldn't have anything as backup. I mean,
Correct. We're not taking anything away from anybody, but we would have to be some consolidation in which we talked about which one would be used by the paids and which one would be used by the volunteers.
And how many hours a week would it pay? How many hours a week would the paid shifts work?
I think the initial proposal, it was that we were going to go Monday through Friday day shift because that seems to be the most difficulty.
The
We're doing
cumulative hours.
Excuse me?
The cumulative
I'm sorry,
hours.
12-hour shifts, so that you have 2 shifts per day. You would have whether you do it 6 to 6 or 7 to 7.
Would these be full-time employees?
They would not.
So it would be under a certain amount of hours?
Correct.
Be under 28 hours.
28 hours?
Under 28 hours.
No overtime?
No overtime.
So now what, when they have a backup call, so they have 2 calls that go out, who would take the second call?
If the volunteers weren't able to do it, that's one of the things that we discussed with St. Clair's, that they would be a mutual aid responder.
So now how would you charge? Now you have volunteers at night that clients wouldn't pay probably because volunteer, but during the day, how will they be charged?
It would be a soft billing,
So the soft billing is that their insurance can pay?
yes, whatever the insurance would pay.
So now what about a copay? So if the client has to pay a copay on the day shift for ambulance service, but now the people at night aren't paying anything, I mean, is that something that would need to be examined? Because now you're charging really a sense.
We've already examined it, where there is a hybrid of this sort, such as Sparta. If the volunteers are on night, yeah, there's no charge. When the paid is working, they will submit a bill to the patient's insurance.
Okay, but if they have to pay a copay for that, does the copay get waived?
It will get billed, but it can be waived.
Because it would make sense,
It-
because
it's-
some people are paying and some people aren't. So I think it really has to be fair all around,
Right. No, absolutely.
so.
This
What-
medical director,
Yes.
what are the qualifications that you're going to require for a medical director for this? And what will be the responsibility?
Well, they'd have to be a doctor, a physician, and they would have to be a doctor or physician specializing in emergency medicine.
This is on full-time then?
No.
They're consultant, essentially.
In other words, they would have a special radio to communicate?
No,
No.
every town that has a paid service has to have a medical director on board. It's a State Department of Health requirement.
On board,
As
With the
part of your
they don't ride the
ordinance.
grid.
No.
No, they usually come out of the area hospital,
Okay,
and they provide direction.
They oversee the training and other aspects of medical care.
So which hospital would that be?
St. Clair's.
what are we doing now with our volunteer efforts?
I don't know what they're doing as far as their recruitment goes. We did speak with them and tell them that if they stepped up their recruitment, we could cut back
But
on
they
the
don't.
service.
The volunteers don't require a medical resident or director?
It's recommended, because even the woman that we spoke to from St. Clair said that she currently serves as a medical director for volunteer ambulance squads throughout Morris and even into Sussex.
So that person would not be a full-time employee?
No. Basically, like I said, it was more of a consultant to oversee the medical aspects of the services that are provided by Vernon.
How would the storage of the ambulances?
We would work that out with the volunteers. They'd probably still use the same buildings.
Would there be rentals?
I don't know that to be the case. We haven't sat down to talk that over with them. I have discussed the broad strokes with them. As it is right now, we currently give them money each year for their budgets. So, I don't think there would be anything additional.
Would you have volunteers and paid employees riding on the same rig at the same time?
No,
So they'd always be separate?
correct.
State requires that if you have a paid EMS service, you have to have 2 EMTs on the rig at all times.
I don't understand why you can't intermix them.
Sorry?
If there's a volunteer that can ride with the paid,
That's a State Department of Health regulation.
What's your rate of or Sparta, or whomever you conferred with, rate of reimbursement with the soft billing?
What do they get in return? I don't know.
No.
They didn't throw out their numbers,
What's,
really.
what's the rate, like
Well,
percentage-wise?
they're Medicaid rates. It's
They're
whatever the
Medicaid?
Medicaid schedule is. Yeah, they pretty much go by those rates.
No, I guess let me rephrase this.
How many people are not
We
paying?
did
Yes,
not
there you
ask
go.
him that.
Oh, I didn't-
We did not ask him that specifically, but if you'd like me to find out,
Yeah,
I can ask him that.
People, commercial insurance deny, which I think they will pay, but Medicaid will pay. If we're not getting reimbursed, I mean, we have to do something, of course, but if we're not getting reimbursed, how are we going to pay out these per diem EMTs? And then it would
Agreed.
be beneficial just to stay with St. Clair's. So I think we need to find out that we're going to recoup that money at a regular rate.
That's the plan.
Okay, so I think I'd like to see that.
That's the other thing that we've
See if we can get some
done.
information, maybe find out from the other towns. Who pays? What insurance pays? Does Aetna pay? Like what
All insurance, all medical insurances will pay.
Mm-hmm.
If the person has medical insurance, it will be paid regardless of where the coverage comes from, whether they're seniors and they have Medicaid, or if they're not seniors and they have their own medical insurance. But there will be payment involved. I can't, like I said, if you want, I'll try to get you what percentage of their residents
Yes,
have
pay.
not paid.
Per
but-
call, if they have
Right.
10 calls go out, are all 10 paying?
Sure.
Something like that.
The medical director, did you say whether or not that's a full-time position?
It's not.
If
No.
that's not a full-time position.
Will our insurance go up or down?
Which insurance are you referring to,
I'm
sir?
assuming there's liability insurance on the ambulances and their care. I would think that if there's a more professional staff manning it, that maybe our insurance would go down.
We'll explore that, but essentially the same amount of insurance has to be paid for the vehicles themselves, and the township already carries liability insurance for the volunteers.
Are there firemen, volunteer firemen, who are EMT qualified?
There are some, yeah.
But they would have to wait the year also if they want to do it.
Yes.
How many volunteers do we have total?
I'm not sure what the number is right now.
I would say, having met with both squads, it's probably down around between 40 and 50.
And how much is for a full complement do we need?
It's not about the numbers, it's about who has the ability to work certain shifts. So you could have 50, but if they're not available on certain nights or days, then that would preclude them from, the coverage. I think they said that back when they were adequately staffed, I think they had each had 50.
Each house?
Each house, yeah.
And we have a total of?
Probably have 50 between the two. They've pretty much, starting with, I think, the end of last year, they started merging their crews. It used to be like, okay, Glenn Pochuck would take one night, Vernon would take the other night, and then all of a sudden they couldn't even separate them out. They would have to cover a particular shift with a blend.
Who would do the billing?
Third party.
Pardon me?
Third party.
It's required. We've already interviewed several medical billing companies.
And how much does that cost?
They get a percentage based upon, yes.
Do you know what that is offhand?
Well, of the three we have, they varied between, was it 6 and 10%, but each of them provides a certain different levels of service for what you get for your percentage. So it's not necessarily the cheapest one that may provide the best for you overall. That's why we're still weighing that aspect.
How much would this add to the total budget if we were proposing it?
The budget, there's already been money added to this year's budget. We were figuring at the time, at the beginning of the year, that we were hopefully going to be able to start this by July 1st, which is, that deadline has come and passed right now. We'd be optimistic if we get the ordinance before you by the end of this month or the beginning of next month, that we might start sometime in October or November.
How much?
We put aside $80,000 to cover the second half of the year based upon what Sparta told us would be a recommended amount.
So you're looking at an annualized number of about $150,000?
Could be, yes.
That's because of the time lapse.
Yes.
Sorry?
Part of it is there's a time lapse between when your medical billing kicks in. That's one of the things that they told us was really important because they suffered that initially. They did not account for the time that it would take for the insurers to be paying you and for the money to start coming in. So they suggested to us that if you were going to start this in July, you'd want to be able to cover the pretty much the entire 6 months with enough in your budget, and they came up with that number for us.
Could we explore whether or not certifying classes are being offered here in Vernon through the college?
For the what, sir?
Certifying classes for EMTs?
That's something we would explore. I know the squads have explored trying to gain more members. One of the things that Sparta told us, which we thought was a pretty good idea, and from what I heard was done years ago, and those of you who have been in the community might remember this, but what Sparta does is they encourage junior membership, in which when the members start at the age of 16, when they become seniors in high school, they allow them, if a second ambulance has to get called out after the paids are already out and they need volunteers, they will allow the students to leave school if they get toned out to go and assist as volunteers.
But the classes should be available locally, I would think, to make it easier for people to take them.
Well, you have instructors. We have, where are the classes? Currently, you have to go.
You have classes at the fire academy, EMT classes.
Yeah.
But they should be offered here in Vernon.
What's that?
They should be offered here in Vernon.
The problem is that you have to be approved for that through the state as to where who's instructing them, where they're being offered.
How much is a ride to St. Anthony's or Newton?
Sorry?
How much would you bill out for a ride to St. Anthony's or Newton?
There's standard rates that, depending upon the distance.
For the ride, it's $8.90.
$8.90, okay. So
And $9 a mile.
Pardon me?
$9 a mile.
Plus $9 a mile?
Okay, now they're not going to be able to choose to go down to Morristown, because I know now at times people can choose where they want to go.
Typically, what happens, depending upon what the call is for, if it's fairly serious, there'll be paramedics or ALS, advanced life support, people who will be coming and making the determination as to what kind of facility that they should go to. So, for example, if it's an accident where there's trauma, and I can attest to that firsthand since I was in a head-on collision, they recommended that I go to Morristown because it's a level 2 trauma center. If it's something that's less urgent, then they could go to St. Anthony's or one of the other hospitals that wouldn't necessarily require that level of expertise.
So when you search around and try to inquire about reimbursement rates, can you also inquire to see if any are denied?
Denied how?
Denied when they submit for maybe non-emergent, I'm sure it will get to that point one day, I'm thinking. Emergency rooms, if you show up at the emergency room, it wasn't an emergency, your insurance will bill you or deny the claim. Would they deny for an ambulance if it was an emergency?
I don't know.
You show up to the house, the person's fine, or they're vomiting. It could be a million and one scenarios, but if it's not emergent, and you take them in the ambulance. I'm just curious, maybe.
Well,
something
in
has-
almost all cases, unless they're quite serious, the patients, even though they call for an ambulance, whether it's the volunteers or St. Clair's at the present time, when they get there, if they are feeling better after the call, they can do a release from medical assistance, or what they call an RMA. So that's still up to the patient to decide. Again, if you're talking about whether or not the person is not, you feel they're not sufficiently ill, there's too much liability in that, so you're always going to transport them.
Right, so
If
I'm
they
just
want to go,
curious
they're
if
going.
The insurance denies them, that's all.
Well, typically they don't. I mean, depending, if there was a situation where you had an individual or individuals that were constantly going and realizing that when they got there, the evaluation was not such that they really probably didn't deserve it, that could happen, but I don't know of any, I don't know if you ever heard of that ever happening. I have not.
What about in a lift assist? What?
The lift assist would typically still probably be handled by the police department, because they are first responders going on nearly all these calls, and if it's just that, then they do a lot of those as it is right now. It's sometimes, if they're too busy to do it, that's when the either paid or the volunteers would be called to help for something like that. But it's definitely put out that way, that it's not an emergency, it's for a lift assist.
Were there a substantial number of volunteers to appear? And they were taking part. Would you be able to reduce the amount of coverage, paid coverage, or at some point eliminate it? So you're not contractually obligated?
No. Listen, there's nothing better for a community than to have volunteers.
Of course.
Nothing better.
So an adjustment in the schedule should be frequent.
Yeah, I mean, the hope is that something like this, because, I mean, it was conveyed to myself and to Lou by the members of these organizations that they felt there was so much pressure on them to be able to provide the level of service that they had formerly done, that it was distressing them all, and that once St. Clair's came on board, or we went to the paid, that perhaps that would refresh those members or additional members that may have stopped being involved, and perhaps bring them back in. That would always be the hope.
Well, let me ask you this. If St. Clair's is doing it now, why are we doing this? Why can't we just leave it with St. Clair's doing their soft billing and responding to our calls?
That would be a possibility. The thing that we see as important is that by us doing the paid with obtaining payment based upon soft billing, is that we get to replenish the resources that the volunteers need as well. We need ambulances, and sooner or later, those ambulances are going to have to be replaced. That would become a budgetary item, whereas the soft billing from the insurance would pay for those. That's exactly what Sparta told us. They have, I think within a year and a half, they got brand new ambulances for their squads.
But they're not being used as much if St. Clair's was to do it, so would they deteriorate that fast? To make
Well,
it really-
you're right. They're not being used as much, but they're all older. I think the newest one might be maybe 3 or 4 years.
Well, the two new ones we have.
Yeah, you just.
I'm sorry, 2
remember
new.
what
You're right.
was in your board, too.
But eventually, I mean, most of the others are quite a bit older. I mean, they've been maintained pretty well, but sooner or later, between them breaking down and or no longer being able to be serviced. We just had one recently go into an auction that because it was just no longer able to be serviced by our mechanics.
Or I will.
That's fine. Just please forward them to me, and in the meantime, I'll find out those 2 things you wanted me to find out. Is there any other questions that anybody else would
And
like me
address the
to look
copay
into?
issue as well.
Total number of volunteers in total of the township, all of Vernon Hills, for all houses.
Okay.
And all houses, by the number per house.
You know, I believe you want active members.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else? Question?
Well, I hope we will have a kind of comparative data available to us for all these questions that we had.
As soon as I get the information, I'll put it out to the council. Like I said, we have the draft of the ordinance before the attorney for review. And like I said, we're hoping to move forward in a reasonable period of time, but I'll make sure that we report back to you prior to that coming to forward to a meeting.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Resolution 17-141, resolution authorizing fireworks to be displayed on September 3rd, 2017, within the Township of Vernon. This allows for fireworks at Mountain Creek Resort. Resolution 17-142, resolution authorizing fireworks to be displayed on August 6th, with a rain date of August 13th, within the Township of Vernon. This allows fireworks at Highland Lakes Country Club. Resolution 17-143, resolution authorizing the application to participate in the electronic sale program. This allows the township to participate in online tax lien sale rather than a regular in-person auction. May I have a motion to adopt Resolution 17-141 through 17-143?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember
Roll call?
Keating?
Yes?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Question. I'm sorry. Yes.
Wetzel?
Yes.
President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt Resolution 17-141.
Next, we have introduction, first reading of proposed ordinances. Ordinance 17-12, an ordinance authorizing a special emergency appropriation of $1 million for the revaluation of real property by the Township of Vernon in the County of Sussex, New Jersey. This authorizes the township to appropriate or encumber the funds for the revaluation because the state allows such expenditures over a 5-year period to be listed as a special emergency. It does not issue a bond or ban at this time. May I have a motion to introduce Ordinance 17-12 with a public hearing to be held July 24th, 2017?
Motion?
Is there a second? I'll second it.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Did you have a question?
Oh, go ahead.
Roll call?
Councilmember Keating?
Yes?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes?
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Question. Is this the same one that we had the last time?
It is the same company. And they were voted on in a previous meeting,
No.
subject to this.
Is this establishing an account?
This is establishing the appropriation for
Appropriation.
But it
the
doesn't
reval.
commit us to a company, does it?
The company was already
Yes.
voted on.
Yes.
Voted on.
Yeah.
All right, I changed my vote. Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to introduce ordinance 17-12 with a public hearing to be held on July 24th, 2017.
Ordinance 1713, an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of Block 120, Lot 19.03 to the County of Sussex. The county is realigning Bridge X09 over the Papakeeting Creek on Route 565 and needs to purchase a piece of property from the township to complete this task. This ordinance authorizes the conveyance of the property. May I have a motion to introduce Ordinance 1713 with a public hearing to be held July 24th, 2017?
I make a motion.
Second?
Roll call?
Councilmember Keating?
Yes?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to introduce ordinance 1713 with a public hearing on July 24th.
Would anybody, excuse me a second, would anybody like to have somebody from the county here to speak on that, or no? You won't need, it won't be necessary?
No,
They
Okay.
gave us a lot of
They
material.
gave us a
everything
map.
that was here.
Okay,
fully
I know they gave a lot, but, okay.
Public hearing, second reading of ordinances. Ordinance 17-10, ordinance of the Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 148 and Chapter 250 of the Code of the Township of Vernon regarding potentially dangerous dogs. The township does not have a section in its code for the licensing of potentially dangerous dogs. This updates the code to include licensing. May I have a motion to open the public hearing for ordinance 1710?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there anyone that would like to step up and have any comments on this ordinance?
Hi, Michelle Vanderplug, Baldwin Drive, Vernon. I just want to know, like, how do you go about saying which dog's dangerous and which dog not? Is it breed, or how is it going to be determined?
Well, this.
It's the court.
Judge.
The judge does that.
I mean, we could have the attorney address this, but basically it's if the court deems a dog dangerous.
Based upon its behavior.
You gotta
Yeah,
have some
by,
kind of litigation done
by
already.
state statute, you can't designate a particular breed as a dangerous or vicious dog.
Correct.
It's an individual dog, and there's a process to establish that the dog is dangerous or vicious. So if you just have a certain breed, like say you have a pit bull, that wouldn't be applicable to this.
Right, so they're going to, like, how are you going to, I have 3 dogs, so how do you find out?
If a
For
judge
all-
deems it, if there's an incident and it goes to court and a judge deems it dangerous,
Okay,
that's at that time.
okay.
But can we further specify in this ordinance that it has to do with attacking people and not other dogs?
It's other dogs, too.
No, it's other dogs. That's
It's dogs and people.
Well, I think there should be a kind of declension as to what offense gets what fine, or the maximum of fine. If a dog attacks another dog, to be fined
But isn't that determined by the court?
$700.
Yes.
That's going to be determined by the
Yes,
court.
I mean,
So,
that's adjudicated, again, through a legal proceeding.
So we
This-
need this ordinance on the books to
This is simply
enact
on,
it.
this is simply on the back end after the judicial proceeding has occurred, the dog has been deemed vicious, then this license fee would occur.
Okay, it's not like you're going to go through town records and say, oh, these people have a dog that once bit another dog, or, okay.
No, but
Only if you went to court.
I feel like I should, talk with Mr. Kadish about this. I tend to agree with you. I mean, I find it difficult to place the same level of penalty on a dog fight between Fido and Rover when they get into it real quick. And, maybe some overzealous owner decides to press charges versus a dog that attacks an individual, hurting him seriously.
I agree.
I just don't think you can paint that broad a stroke with a brush on this. And in my mind, the $700 to me is way out of line.
I'd like to see that.
And if you
lowered also.
happen to have a dog that has been adjudicated to being vicious, and it's a 5-year-old dog that has a 14 or 15-year, let's say a 15-year life expectancy, you could be looking at $7,000 less what you would normally pay in additional licensure fees.
This is for potentially dangerous, though. It's not for vicious.
Sorry?
A vicious dog would be
A vicious dog
either way.
could be euthanized.
Okay, but either way.
I feel
Depends on how good a lawyer you have probably on something like that.
well, then I guess if you have a lawyer, I guess the fee is really secondary to that.
Well, I don't,
But
I
At
find
this-
it difficult to,
At this point, though, if,
excuse me, I was talking. I find it
we'll
difficult.
have to redo the ordinance.
Well, it's okay with me.
Well, you should have read it before.
No, I
think it
I'm
should
sorry,
be lowered
I'm
as well.
bringing it up
So,
now.
well, let this,
I've worked with dog rescue for probably 25 years, a few different rescues, and I believe that there should be a difference if it's a dog human bite or dog on dog bite. I think there is a difference unless a dog has done both, which I feel is a whole nother gamut. But I do believe that dog on human is, to me, more dangerous because a dog is going to be a dog and probably bite another dog at some point in its life, possibly, but it shouldn't be biting humans. So, that's all.
thank you. I'd like to make some statements. As Mr. Rizzuto said, it's year after year, so if the courts don't deem that the dog needs to be euthanized, then are we speeding up the process because somebody can't afford it? I guess my question is, what is the goal of this amount? We've chose 700. Why did we choose 700 versus 300? What's the goal? Because I've checked other towns, they range anywhere from 100 to 700. Sparta charges 500. So what's the goal for that choice, that number choice? Are we trying to penalize these people? Are we trying to encourage them to euthanize their dogs because they've been deemed potentially dangerous and we've put now a big licensing fee on and they have to pay it year after year and may not be able to afford it? So that's why I am recommending amending this to a lower rate, and then once we determine the rate, what are we going to do with that money? And I think it should be earmarked for potential litigation down the road when we do have to litigate dogs that are have incidents in town, or use it for education.
And perhaps we also ought to have a separate section for dog-on-dog situation versus a dog in a human situation. Seems to me, a lot of these questions are just being raised now. Maybe if the changes are not substantive enough, we can go forward with it. But if it's too much, then we'll just table it for revision.
Mr. McClackery?
I'm with Mr. Rizzuto. He's up for the Boston Terrier.
I had a Pomeranian, and we all know how vicious they are.
Okay, basically, I was going to get up here. I do own a dog, and I'm going to segue into something else. But when I looked at this, it's $700 for one dog that's vicious, whatever it is, and it's been either approved or appointed by the court that it's vicious. And for the other dog, it's going to be $14. But when you look at the logic behind imposing $700 on somebody for a vicious dog, how does that make the neighbors any more safer than the $14 dog? I mean, the court has already come along and said, hey, you got to have it at 6-foot enclosure, and hey, you got to have it with a muzzle if it comes out of there. So when I look at it, the only thing $700 is doing is making it look like the council's doing something. But it's not really improving the safety either of the neighbors or of the mail carriers or whomever goes on the property. And my suggestion to you is simple. If your concern is about safety, then you ought to address the safety. And yes, if you ask the attorney, he's going to tell you. The court has already come along and opened up the door. And it's classified, has a classification for this dog. And if you want to expand that door opening, you can come back and say, fine, but we want a 6-foot fence around the entire property, and we want 2 doors or openings on the fence that close onto each other so that you can only open one at a time, and the dog has got to be on a leash, muzzled, and all of that stuff. And it can't leave that enclosure unless it's accompanied by the owner or it's in the car. You can make your own, you can just, make your own conditions, which to me would seem to be rather less punitive, but also improve the safety of the neighbors. So you'd only charge them $14, but you'd make them put up another fence and other appropriate safety measures for the dog to stay there. I mean, the way we're looking at it now is a punitive way of looking at it. I mean, for $700, I like dogs, but there's a limit to how much you're going to pay. The guy can just walk 5 miles over to Warwick and blow it all away. That's true. You can buy a piece of property. The Jersey court can go fly an apple. It has no jurisdiction over there. Whatever. But having said that, when you look at the logic, imposing a fee on somebody is a way of inflicting a punitive damage on them. And if you look at that logic and segue into the MUA, you can see the same logic, in that we're going to provide you with a service, expansion of the sewer area, that you really don't want. But we're going to give it to you, and we're going to give you the bargain basement price, $1,500 a year. It's going to go up every year, and we're going to give you the bargain basement price of $20,000 a house to hook up. Don't you think that's going to drive people away? Just as you're trying to do this dog owner, that service is also going to drive people away. And that was my segue. And Boston Terriers, and thank you very much.
Well, the only thing I have to say about this is that we had this introduced, it was given to the public, and
Well, we'll just
now,
have to redo it if
right,
if
but now
you all
we're
agree,
going to,
that's all.
but we pay for that every
Well,
time, just so
then
you know.
that happens,
We
so
pay
to
for it.
do the right decision.
Well, that's why it's being given out
Well,
as
maybe-
early as it is. Yes, Brian?
Brian Lynch, Barry Lakes. I'm listening to the dogmatic concerns of everybody here tonight. And I think that the council has more questions than answers right now. And I think that before you move any further, adopt this and then maybe have a work session on this issue and speak to other towns and where they lie with this. Hearing $700, a lot of people in town have expressed to me that, a lot of people, most people that I'm in contact with anyway, that they have a lot of questions too. And before people start running around and politicizing dogs, running out and licking somebody, and then all of a sudden, well, now you're going to get a fine of $700 and not knowing the full verbiage of the ordinance. I think it needs to be a lesson to all of us. And just take a step back. It's not like the dogs are at the gates right now, ready to start attacking people. So just take a look at it and see what other towns do. Charging $700 for something that you're giving a judge the authority now, and that judge is not going to ever see that dog. And it may have a bad day, just like the rest of us do, but we usually don't bite other people. But I'm just asking that if you just take a step back, do some more research on this before you pass this as an ordinance. Thank you.
Yeah, John Stevens, Vernon. I just wanted to know, who makes up the list of what dogs are bad?
No, Johnson, this
Who makes the list?
This happens by virtue of a case going before a judge.
Yeah, okay.
And the owners, I guess you're talking about the plaintiff and the defendant, get together and, the judge hears both sides and determines that the dog acted outside of the way a normal dog should act, okay? Doesn't mean that if the dog is a collie that, it's all collies or anything. It's that particular dog.
I understand.
So nobody's making up any list of dogs.
How are they going to
Or breeds.
decide before it goes to court that that dog was bad?
The judge will decide.
Judge decides.
Somebody has to sue you and take you to court, or the town, I
If the
imagine.
dog bites somebody or something.
Right.
So what? Well, I got 3 dogs right now. If my 3 dogs wind up on that list, because you're going to have to make a list.
Oh, no
No,
list.
no list.
There's no list.
No list.
So how could you charge $700?
Let the attorney, do you want,
Because it's a license.
Yeah.
can we have the attorney explain
Yeah,
this?
sir, like we articulated earlier.
I don't hear too good. Could you talk a little louder?
No problem, sir.
Yeah.
As we articulated earlier, you know, a dog will only be designated as vicious based on an incident occurring. And then there's a judicial process to deem it vicious. It's not like the town is going to go around making lists of particular dogs.
Okay.
So your 3 dogs, unless they have an incident, this would not impact them.
Okay, you have to have an incident then.
Yes.
And if the incident says 1 dog is a dangerous dog, it don't have to do with the other 2 that I got?
Exactly.
That's all, thank you.
Just that one dog.
You want to table this?
I suggest you table it.
I'd like to say table it for, till the beginning of August, because I want to do a little bit more research. But how did this number come about? Like, again, I guess we're all wondering, like, what's the $750? I mean, how did that come about? Like, why not charge $200? I mean, what will we be doing with that money, and why did we pick that figure? I'm just curious. I didn't pick it, so somebody did, so I'm just curious why we came up with that number.
I don't want to throw the township attorney under the bus, but he's recommended that we go a little high. Obviously, it's up to the council whether you wish to lower it.
Because if you're going to charge, as Tom brought up a very good point, if you're going to charge $750, that money would probably best be used to make their property safe and things like that versus paying us for it. And then I would like to see whatever we do, that it goes into not the general budget as if we're trying to make a profit off of this, but to use it for education.
Hopefully, we won't have many.
Well, you're right, hopefully we won't have many, but that's a good point. But use it for education and teach dog owners safety and what to do if you have a dog like this and things
Well,
like
and there's
that.
also schooling. Dog behavior can be changed. I'd like to see a declension of at least 3 or 4 categories. A dog fighting another dog is a category. A dog fight in which a person is trying to separate them and gets bitten is a category, I think. A vicious dog that attacks people, I think, is another category. And I think there should be different fines for each area. If a person splitting up 2 dogs gets bitten, some of that is his responsibility or her responsibility at the same time. I don't know whether that goes to court or not, but I think there's some other things to think about. Dogs can be well schooled after a bad behavior, and I don't see any opportunity for that to happen. If a dog is really vicious, it's often the behavior of the owner that has either caused it or caused the incident. And I've seen several cases in which the owner did not take responsibility afterwards. And then I think we should have some fines or heavy licensing fees if there's a track record of this. But it's not necessarily it's the owner that needs to be fined, not the dog.
Well, the owner would be fined.
Try getting it out of the dog.
Yeah. So we want to table this to August 7th?
I'd like to see that.
Yes, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Sorry, is it 7th or is it later?
Oh, I'm sorry, August 14th?
I just need clarification. We're tabling the public hearing, or are we tabling the ordinance and then reintroducing it? I just need.
We're tabling the ordinance and reintroducing it.
It's 14th.
Yes?
So you're tabling 1710, and then you would like to see a new ordinance brought forward
On August 14th.
on August 14th.
we need to talk about it and come up with some kind of consensus, I would think, before then.
Can I just?
Is there a
add-
motion? Oh.
Can I just add that we'll let you know what the extra cost to the state is, because it is a higher licensing fee, which is part of the reason that we did this.
150 is the license.
So it should at least cover that, because otherwise the town's paying for it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is there a motion to table?
That was good to know.
Motion was
Thank
made.
you.
I second.
Second? You second it?
Sorry, who made the motion?
Mrs. Holmes made the motion, and I seconded it.
Roll call?
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries
Unanimous.
to table ordinance 1710 and a reintroduced ordinance for August 14th.
Next, we have ordinance 1711, ordinance amending the salary ordinance for non-union employees. This resolution creates or adjusts the salary ranges for positions that are either at the top of the range or are new. May I have a motion to open to the public hearing for ordinance 1711?
Motion.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there anyone that would like to address the council on ordinance 1711? Seeing no one coming forward, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 1711?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Question. Mr. Vogler, according to the ordinance, there was an adjustment on the min-maxes, I guess, on these. What were they before this ordinance?
I don't recall what they were previously. Do you?
The
I think
first one was 90, up to the max of 95. The second was up to the max of 95. The third one was up to a max of 5,000, and the part-time OEM coordinator wasn't a position previously.
New position.
This is a new position.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt ordinance 1711.
Council comments. Councilmember Wetzel.
I understand the problem with the rescue squad. A friend of mine has to take leave of absences because of all the hours and days that he puts in. So I know it's going to be an added expense to the public, but I think for the general welfare of the town, it has to be done.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
No comment.
Councilmember Holmes?
I don't have any comments, but I always thought about, why couldn't, for the reeval, why can't we just reduce the property tax by a certain percentage? We could save ourselves $1 million. Why didn't we do that, or can we still do that?
We'd have to reduce the budget by a similar amount.
Well, we may be doing the same thing. Right?
What did you just say?
Well, instead of our property values are going to probably go down. I think. Why don't we reduce them as a cut? Isn't that an
option? No.
Well,
We were ordered by the county.
well, that was
do a
because we
reval.
had so many tax appeals to do it. So we wouldn't have as many tax appeals.
But that would have to be done within a certain period of time, right in the beginning. I think you have the first couple years that you can do that.
Just speak into the microphone.
I think you have the first few years that you can actually do that, but then it
Few
gets to...
years from what, the
from when
last
the reval.
eval?
Yeah, from when the reval.
And how many years has it been? 10?
It's been 10. It'll be 10 in 2018. Actually, if you look at Jefferson's website, they used to have that, because that's what they did.
Oh, okay.
They did that way back,
Oh, all
and
right, so
actually,
it
like,
wasn't so far
2009,
off base.
2010, actually, that was being looked at, because the numbers were off immediately. because of the drop in the market.
Okay, no comment.
On Thursday, the Historic Preservation Commission met, or tried to meet, and according to the ordinance, there wasn't a quorum. The ordinance is, as far as I'm concerned, incorrect, because it has 7 full-time members and 9 altogether with the alternates. But the alternates don't vote unless there's an absence. So the appropriate quorum should be 4, and 4 people showed up, and we all had to go home because we couldn't have a meeting. So I would like to see that ordinance amended for 7 members so that the quorum becomes 4. I'd like to have the council think about it and change it so we can have a meeting.
And I spoke to the clerk about that regarding Chapter 5, and Ordinance 11-21 is, there are several issues with it, and I know we've discussed the last year and a half about actually going in and changing it and rewriting it, and that's something that, when I spoke to Lauren, she could forward to us some of the issues that are wrong with the ordinance, like appointing the attorney, appointing the police chief. There's several issues in Chapter 5, Chapter 37 that need to be addressed. So if we could just do all of those at once. But like I said, the entire ordinance has to be gone through 11-21. There's probably at least 4 or 5 issues that are that need to be addressed, and they could just be done all at once.
Well, that's going to delay
Well, it's not
any
going-
meetings, because we can't have a meeting then in August, because 2 people are already going to be out.
Well, no, but if Lauren sends those changes, the council can actually sit and go through on their own Chapter 5. You can go through Ordinance 11-21 and see if you come up with any issues that are there, as well as the attorney. We're going to ask the attorney to look at that. Because like I said, for years now, we've dealt with many issues in it, even appointing the municipal attorney. Our administrative code is incorrect, and it's never been corrected. So it would be best if we just once and for all did it, took care of it. Possibly we can have something for introduction at the next meeting.
I don't see that happening without a work session.
Well, did you want to form a subcommittee and be on it? I mean, it's,
I did once before.
well,
Pat and I worked hard on it.
okay, well, like I said,
You're never going to catch them all the first time around.
no, but like I said, if there are several other than the one for historic preservation that need to be addressed. So
Agreed.
if many of them are taken, they can at least be put to rest. Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.